When you reach Nirvana, does that mean you've found God? Today, we're going to take a look at Dr. K sat down with Steven Bartlett on a Diary of a CEO, and they talked about the primary focus of it was about resisting temptation, resisting the urge to watch pornography and to masturbate and all that. That's what they mainly focused on, and it was very eye-opening and very enlightening. And hearing Dr. K explain, because he is very smart, he gives a lot of techniques of, I wouldn't even say resisting, because he says when you get into resisting, you're going to lose. And he gives a lot of like pointers of how to not succumb to something. It is basically putting it out there that you are not going to cave. And when you do, if you say you're not going to, and then you do, you've lost. And he gives a lot of techniques of how to resist, how to avoid it and all that. And it's very eye-opening and very good. He gets into all the psychology of it. But the focus kind of shifts and kind of turns when Steven starts asking him about God. And I think you'd have to check with the Diary of a CEO, but it seems like they cut a lot of stuff out because there's things that I think that were missing from it, because it sounds like he went into like talking about beings that are out there and all this, and because they're talking about it in like retrospect in the conversation, but it doesn't say it in the conversation. And it's really cool. I want to actually, it almost gives Dr. K a little pause when Steven brings up about, do you believe in God? And I want to take a look at this.
But what's really fascinating is if you look at some of these old Eastern texts, they say that the universe is born out of a point called Bindu Visarga, which is literally described as a point of infinite energy, matter, and consciousness, which then explodes into the universe.
Do you believe in a God?
Sure. So I think that what we call a God, so if you look at like a person has like layers, right? So if I ask like, who is Steven? Steven has a body. So there's a certain level of Steven that is a physical form. There's a certain level of Steven that is a bank account. There's a certain level of Steven that is a brand. Which one of those is really Steven? They're all really Steven. So I think there is something at the resolution that people would call a God that does exist.
So you think there's a higher power that is somewhat intentional?
Yes.
Obviously the question becomes, what created that?
So I don't think that's the right question, because when we talk about what created God, it's asking the wrong question. It's asking the wrong thing, because you will get into this infinite, like, escalator type of theology that you just go back and back and back. There's never one singularity or point. Because I know we always talk about the singularity of the Big Bang. That's where everything was in one point and then exploded into everything. You know, almost nothingness became everything. The Bible is kind of clear about it. The singularity is Jesus. He is the point that everything just erupted into everything. God the Father spoke through Jesus, the Word, and just everything came into existence. It says we are held intact by the Son of God, by the word of his power. We are held together. Our molecules are not just dismembering or just going away from each other. But like it was kind of weird whenever he asked, do you believe in God? And he's like, sure. And it seemed like at that point, that was the only, throughout the whole conversation, that Dr. K got a little bit like, you want to go there? You really want to go there? Kind of thing. He was hesitant. He talked about everything. I mean, you're talking about masturbation and like the most uncomfortable subject ever. And he's like, he doesn't care. It's like, it's very easy to talk about in just regular common parlance. But when you bring up the issue about God, it seemed like I'm not ready to touch that. I don't know. And this next clip is really eye-opening, because he says, I don't want to talk about it. And Steven asks the question, and even Steven is caught off guard. And then Dr. K, he goes into it. It's pretty cool.
But I just want to know what your intuition tells you.
It's not, so experience, right? So I think when you experience certain states of meditation, you have experiences of things outside of the normative reality. Now, you can also make a biological reductionist argument that those are just illusions, hallucinations created by neurons. I don't think that that's true.
What specifically are you referring to that you've experienced?
I don't talk about it. You can ask me a more specific question, and then maybe I can say something. But
what is the right question to ask you?
So I'll try to explain. So this is going to get weird, okay?
Okay, it's going to get weird. It's not as weird as you'd think it's going to get, but like, Steven's like, what do I need to ask you to get, like, what you're talking about? Something has changed, like, his demeanor and what he's, like, actually going through and getting into this. I think because I have had experiences before, like when I talked to somebody, just a random guy I wanted to share Jesus with, and I brought up the Lord to him, and he's like, he was immediately, like, the countenance in anybody's face changes when you start talking about God, about anything, because he's like, don't talk to me about that. You don't bring that up to somebody. That is something you don't say to somebody. I was a new Christian and I just completely caught him off guard. But when you start bringing up the topic about these type of things, and you would expect that would be the case, when we're talking about the most important things of ever, and we all have this core innate desire of finding out what the truth is, but we're all just grasping for something. It becomes very personal. And at times he even talks about guilt and feeling bad and shame and all this. And it's like, that is why it does get extremely tough for anybody, because we all experiencing that. And like, do we really need to experience that with God? And I think if we have a right view of God, we don't need to. We shouldn't need to, because there's a reason that Jesus went to the cross. He paid for our sin. He paid for our shame. He paid for our guilt. But if you're going out on all these other directions of viewpoints of the world, you're going to come up empty. I don't care how much nirvana you achieve or how much meditation you put in. You could put it in centuries. If you don't find Jesus, Jesus is the answer. He's the answer. I don't want to be like dogmatic, but like at a point you have to tell people how it is. You have to tell people how it is. But let's hear it get weird.
So I realized recently that I used to value credibility over truth. You understand, credibility and truth are two fundamentally different things. So credibility is saying something that is believable, right? So believability depends on you, not on me.
Yeah.
So what I realized recently is that credibility is about changing your language to fit the ignorance of the audience, like literally. So I was thinking about this recently in my own midlife crisis. And I was like, what am I here to do? Am I here to be famous and successful? If so, then I should be credible. But if I want to speak the truth, then I need to allow my brand or whatever the fuck it is to like fall apart and be like not credible for people to think that I'm an idiot. And I think that is more important, right? Because that's ego. Like people can think I'm dumb. I would rather speak the truth than be credible in this moment and in some limited ways.
Right there. It seems like he's caught in this hard place. He doesn't want, and this is where I think they took some stuff out. I don't know. You would have to ask them if they clip some stuff, and they have to. They make it really good. They put a good package together when they release every podcast of Diary of a CEO. But then after this, it seems like they're talking about, or Dr. K says, I might just sound like some crazy guy talking about these beings out there and all this, but I didn't really hear him talking about it. I didn't in the conversation. You don't really hear him actually touching on those things. So did things get just clipped and removed because it went way too out there, or did they want to keep the flow? I mean, there's reasons for editing and all that, but when he talks about, this is where it's going to get weird. I have to decide whether I want to be credible or I want to tell the truth. Do I want to be credible because anybody can get out there and just say whatever if you want to, what your audience is going to like be happy about. They're going to receive. Just by me saying earlier, Jesus is the answer, Jesus is the truth. Immediately, you who hear this are going to be either like, amen, brother, or you're going to be like, this guy's a freaking idiot. This guy doesn't know what the heck he's talking about. You're probably in one camp or the other. And some people are indifferent, you're kind of in that in between. You're not even giving any thought about it. But most people are on one side or the other. They've kind of made their decision. And even not knowing you've made a decision at some points. But I think this is where he kind of went off the radar. He said, I want to be a person that talks about truth. And he goes into all these kind of, he says, I don't want to let ego get in and me like say, I've had these visions, I've had these experiences, because every time I talk about that, I get set back about a decade. And I think that is the whole pursuit of nirvana and pursuit of just becoming one with whatever it is out there. And this whole karma thing that, you do good, you got to do enough good so you can get out of it, so you can become absorbed one back with your creator, back with this thing that first started you. But all of this, it's fluff. And I know that so many people talk about these things, that so many people believe this, but no matter what you think, it's fluff. And all it is a distraction to try to distract you from the real question is, who is Jesus? Who do you say that he is? Every other direction that anybody goes out, they're just trying to stiff arm the reality and the truth that is being presented to them. And they don't want to think about it. They don't want to talk about it. Because Nirvana, Buddha, all this Hinduism and all this other stuff, it doesn't put a demand on your life, a demand for change, a demand to actually make a decision and do something different, you know? You're not really being held accountable by Buddha. You're not really being held accountable by these Eastern religions that are out there, you know? But there is accountability when we look at the Bible, you know, and the revealed truth of who God is. And that's why it becomes squeamish, uncomfortable, because a lot of us, we just don't want to deal with it. And it's like, until we just jump in, and I don't think we ever just, I'm going to jump into God today. No, a lot of times God just says, you're jumping in. He grabs us. You know, and if you feel yourself that I'm going to surrender to him, on the other side, you're going to see that God was the one causing you to surrender. That's what I would say to all that. But like, he went in a lot of different directions. They talked about a lot of things. I'm not, everybody feels uncomfortable talking about pornography and masturbation and all that. The whole podcast was very good. You should listen to it. There's so many just good techniques, because he gives a lot of good ideas of just like changing your mindset about these things so that you don't give in to something and become mastered by your addictions. So overall, Dr. K is amazing. I would have to say that he's very brilliant, but I don't know where he's at, because I don't know, did they cut some stuff out that might have given us a little bit more truth of the matter of what they talked about. All right, so if you've enjoyed this video, hit this video on this side, and I'll see you on the other side.